Hello, night traveler. This is Linus, your dreamweaver from Magical Nights. Snuggle under your blanket and let your imagination flow freely as we venture into the enchanted paths of magical and fantastic tales. Tonight, we will journey into the ancient Irish forest that hides powerful secrets. Kale, an elf guardian, and Brianna, a young healer, face the threat of the druid Egan, who returns to claim the power of the Crystal Lake. With the help of fairies and druids, they engage in intense battles and mystical rituals. Tested to their limits, Kale and Brianna must overcome their deepest fears. Ready to dream? In ancient times, when the hills of Ireland were covered by dense forests and the rivers flowed clear as crystal, there was a magical lake known as the Crystal Lake. Nestled in the depths of a valley surrounded by green mountains and ancient woods, this lake was considered sacred by the Celtic people. It was believed that its waters had healing properties and were home to ancient spirits and magical beings. The Celts, with their deep reverence for nature and the spiritual world, performed rituals and ceremonies on the shores of the lake, offering tributes and prayers to the gods and the guardians of the waters. The environment around the lake was filled with mystery and beauty, with morning mists dancing over the mirror-like surface of the water, reflecting the glow of the stars and the full moon. The ancient trees surrounding the lake whispered secrets to the wind, and the wildflowers exuded a sweet and enchanting fragrance, attracting butterflies and bees. At the heart of this magical setting lived Kale, an ancient elf, wise and powerful, whose duty was to protect the Crystal Lake from any threat. Kale was known for his wisdom and mystical abilities, respected and revered by all beings of the Celtic world. He had long silver hair that shimmered under the moonlight and green eyes that reflected the depth of the lake. He dressed in robes made of light and ethereal fabric, adorned with ancient symbols and precious stones that amplified his magical powers. Legend said that Kale had been chosen by the gods themselves to be the guardian of the lake after demonstrating bravery and loyalty in an ancient battle against dark forces that threatened to destroy the balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. Since then, he dedicated his life to protecting the Crystal Lake, using his powers to maintain the purity of the waters and the harmony of the valley. The Celtic people believed that the lake was the source of a hidden power capable of granting health, prosperity, and wisdom to those who proved themselves worthy. Only the purest of heart could approach the lake and drink from its waters without suffering consequences. Those who tried to abuse its power or approach with impure intentions were repelled by an invisible force or punished with terrible curses. Kale spent his days in constant vigilance, walking along the shores of the lake, feeling the energy of the waters, and conversing with the spirits that inhabited there. He knew every stone, every plant, and every creature living near the lake, and he could sense any disturbance in the harmony of the place. On nights of the full moon, he performed special rituals, invoking the ancient powers to reinforce the lake's protections and ensure that the hidden power remained safe. The inhabitants of nearby villages often sought Kale for guidance and healing. Many came with offerings, bringing fruits, honey, herbs, and flowers as signs of respect and gratitude. In his kindness, Kale helped those who came with pure intentions, using his abilities to heal illnesses, bless crops, and protect homes against evil forces. Despite his life dedicated to protecting the lake and serving the gods, Kale also faced moments of loneliness and reflection. He knew that his role as guardian distanced him from mortals and placed him in a position of immense responsibility. The silent nights by the lake were times when he meditated on his purpose and renewed his commitment to the task entrusted to him. Thus, the Crystal Lake and its guardian, Kale, remained symbols of balance, power, and mystery in the heart of the Celtic world. Through the ages, the legend of the lake and its guardian continued to be told, inspiring respect, reverence, and a sense of wonder among all who heard their stories. Kale, the guardian of the Crystal Lake, lived in a small cabin made of wood and covered with moss and plants, harmonizing perfectly with the surrounding nature. The cabin was located in a clearing near the lake, surrounded by tall trees and wildflowers. Inside, the environment was simple but cozy, with rustic furniture, animal pelts for warmth on cold nights, and herbs hanging to dry alongside protective amulets. Since he was young, Cale showed a deep connection with nature and the magical elements. His parents, also wise elves, taught him ancient knowledge about plants, stars, and the secrets of the spiritual world. They prepared him for a grand destiny, but it was his own bravery and pure heart that led him to be chosen by the gods for the great responsibility of protecting the Crystal Lake. Time passed differently for Cale. While mortals aged quickly, he maintained a youthful and vigorous appearance thanks to the magic that permeated him. His face, with delicate features and piercing eyes, reflected both wisdom and a certain melancholy. The loneliness of his mission was a burden he carried with dignity, but not without moments of sadness. In one of the villages near the Crystal Lake, there lived a young woman named Brianna. She was known for her beauty and kindness, with long, wavy hair the color of wheat and eyes as blue as the summer sky. Brianna was a talented healer, having learned the arts of healing from her grandmother, who was also a wise woman. Her ability to prepare potions and natural remedies was admired by everyone in the village. Brianna had an adventurous and curious spirit. Since she was a child, she heard stories about the Crystal Lake and its guardian, Cale, and felt an inexplicable attraction to that mysterious place. Despite the villagers' warnings about the dangers of approaching the lake without permission, Brianna felt that something in her destiny connected her to Cale and those magical waters. Once, during a harvest festival in the village, Brianna had a vivid dream. She saw herself walking along the shores of the Crystal Lake, feeling the gentle breeze and hearing the whispers of the trees. In the dream, she met Cale, who looked at her with eyes full of recognition and said, "You have an important role to play, Brianna. The destiny of the lake and our lands is intertwined with yours." When she woke up, Brianna couldn't get the dream out of her head and decided that, somehow, she needed to find Cale. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, a dark being was awakening from a deep sleep. It was a renegade druid named Egan, who, in past times, had tried to use the power of the Crystal Lake for his own selfish purposes. He had been banished by Cale and the gods, condemned to wander the spiritual world without a physical form. However, his determination and hatred were so intense that he managed to return to the mortal world, longing for revenge and the power he believed was rightfully his. Egan, now seeking a way to break the lake's protections and defeat Cale, began gathering dark forces and evil spirits. His heart was full of rancor, and he was willing to use any means necessary to achieve his goals. The shadow of his presence began to spread through the forest, affecting animals, plants, and even the inhabitants of nearby villages. While Cale felt the growing disturbance in the lake's balance, he knew that something dark was about to happen. He began to intensify his vigils and perform more powerful rituals to strengthen the lake's protections. However, he also knew he would need help to face the imminent threat. In his heart, he felt that the young Brianna, who often appeared in his dreams, could be the key to saving the Crystal Lake. The destinies of Cale, Brianna, and Egan were about to intersect in an inexorable way. In a world where mysticism and reality intertwined, their actions would shape the future of the Crystal Lake and the lands around it. The hidden power of the lake was at stake, and the balance between light and darkness would depend on the courage, wisdom, and determination of those involved in this epic journey. It was a calm and cold morning when Brianna decided to follow the call of her dreams. The mist hung over the village, enveloping everything in a veil of mystery. The villagers were starting their day, but Brianna was determined to learn more about the Crystal Lake and Cale, the guardian who had visited her dreams with words of importance and destiny. Packing a small backpack with herbs, potions, and some food, she said goodbye to her family, promising to return soon. Her parents, though worried, understood their daughter's curiosity and adventurous spirit. They blessed her with words of protection and hope, and she set off into the unknown. The forest surrounding the Crystal Lake was dense and full of life. Brianna walked along ancient trails, guided by intuition that seemed to come from deep within her. The sound of birds, the rustling leaves under her feet, and the distant murmur of the lake's waters created a natural symphony that calmed and encouraged her to move forward. As Brianna approached the lake, Cale felt a presence drawing near. He was in his cabin, meditating on the signs of disturbance that had been growing in recent days. The sense of impending danger made him uneasy, but upon sensing Brianna's aura, he felt a strange mix of hope and familiarity. Leaving his meditation, he walked to the lake shore, where he could observe any unexpected arrivals. When Brianna finally reached the crystal lake, she was amazed by its beauty and serenity. The water shimmered as if filled with stars, and the surrounding forest seemed alive with mystical energy. She knelt by the shore, feeling the cold water in her hands and whispering a silent prayer to the Celtic gods, asking for guidance and protection. Suddenly, she heard movement in the trees and quickly stood up, her heart pounding. Cale emerged from the forest, his green eyes glowing with an intensity that took her breath away. He looked exactly as he did in her dreams, majestic and ethereal, with a presence that radiated power and wisdom. "Brianna," he said, his voice soft but authoritative. "I felt your arrival. You have an important role to play here, as shown in your dreams." Brianna approached cautiously, feeling an immediate connection with Cale. "I knew I had to come here," she replied. "My dreams brought me to you. What is happening? Why do I feel something terrible is about to happen?" Cale nodded, his eyes narrowing as he looked at the lake. "There is a darkness approaching, Brianna. An ancient enemy, Egan, has returned from the shadows and seeks the hidden power of the crystal lake. He will bring destruction if not stopped. I felt you would be a valuable ally in this battle, and now I see I was right." Brianna felt a chill run down her spine at the mention of Egan's name. The stories about the renegade druid had been told for generations, but she never imagined she would have to face such a great evil. "How can I help?" she asked, her determination growing. "What do I need to do?" Cale led her to his cabin, where he began to explain more about Egan's threat and the importance of protecting the lake. He taught Brianna about protection rituals and how to use the herbs and potions she had brought. Together, they spent hours preparing enchantments and strengthening the magical barriers around the lake. As they worked side by side, Cale and Brianna developed a deep friendship and mutual respect. Brianna admired Cale's wisdom and strength, while he saw in her a courageous spirit and a brilliant mind. The connection they felt seemed to grow with each moment, and both knew that together, they had a greater chance of defeating the approaching darkness. As night fell, they prepared for the first of many protection rituals. Cale lit a sacred fire by the lake, and Brianna began to chant ancient songs, her words blending with the crackling flames and the soft murmur of the waters. The stars began to appear in the sky, and a sense of hope and determination filled both their hearts. However, as they performed the ritual, Egan watched from afar, hidden in the shadows. His eyes gleamed with ancient hatred and an insatiable desire for power. He knew that Brianna's presence complicated his plans, but he was determined to break the Crystal Lake's defenses and take the power he believed was rightfully his. Egan began to plan his next move, knowing that the battle for the lake's soul was only beginning. Dawn brought a new energy, but also the first signs that the battle would be arduous. Cale and Brianna spent the night performing rituals and strengthening the magical barriers around the crystal lake, but the air was heavy with the feeling that something was about to happen. As they walked along the lake's shores, inspecting the protections, a cold and unsettling wind began to blow through the forest. Cale stopped, his keen senses detecting a disturbing presence. "He is near," he murmured, his eyes fixed on the shadows between the trees. Suddenly, the sound of breaking branches echoed through the forest, followed by a low and threatening growl. From among the trees emerged a horrendous creature, a creation of Egan's dark arts. The creature, a grotesque mix of wolf and man, advanced towards Kale and Brianna, its red eyes glowing with malevolence. Kale immediately raised a hand, conjuring a magical shield that enveloped him and Brianna. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice firm. Brianna, though frightened, grabbed her herbs and began preparing a protection potion, her hands working quickly while Kale kept the creature at bay with powerful spells. The battle was intense. The creature attacked with fury, trying to break Kale's shield. Each blow it landed caused ripples in the magical shield, but Kale held his ground, his determination unwavering. Brianna, finally ready with her potion, threw the glowing liquid towards the creature. The liquid burst into flames on contact, causing the creature to retreat with a scream of pain. Taking advantage of the distraction, Kale cast a final spell, destroying the creature in an explosion of light. "That was just a test," he said, breathless. "Egan is probing our defenses. We need to be prepared for more." Brianna nodded, her heart still racing with adrenaline. "If he is testing our defenses, it means he is planning something bigger," she said. "We need to strengthen ourselves and perhaps find allies." Kale agreed. "There are other guardians and magical beings who can help us. We need to alert the nearby villages and gather everyone who can fight by our side." Kale and Brianna's journey to find allies began immediately. They traveled through forests and hills, visiting villages and speaking with other magical beings who lived in seclusion. At each stop, they warned of Egan's threat and asked for help. Many responded to the call, bringing with them unique abilities and a willingness to protect the Crystal Lake. Along the way, Kale and Brianna faced more obstacles. Dark creatures sent by Egan tried to ambush them, and they had to use all their cunning and power to survive. Each battle strengthened their bond, and both became more determined to overcome the approaching darkness. One night, while camping in a clearing, Brianna had a disturbing dream. She saw Egan, more powerful than ever, manipulating the forces of nature to corrupt the Crystal Lake. In the dream, she saw the lake's waters darkening and the forest spirits fleeing in despair. She woke up sweating, her heart heavy. "Kale," she said, looking at him with concern, "I had a dream. Egan is becoming stronger. We need to act quickly." Kale comforted her, holding her hands firmly. "Your dreams are visions, Brianna. We need to pay attention to them. Let's intensify our efforts and gather all the allies we can. We will not allow Egan to corrupt the Crystal Lake." With renewed determination, they continued their journey. News of Egan and his threat spread, and more beings joined the cause. Elves, druids, humans, and magical creatures formed an unlikely alliance, united by the desire to protect the Crystal Lake and preserve the harmony of the Celtic world. Each day brought new challenges, but also new hopes. Kale and Brianna, now leaders of a diverse army, were ready to face the approaching darkness. They knew the final battle would be arduous, but the courage and spirit of unity they found in their allies gave them the strength to continue. The journey that had begun as a personal call had now become a collective mission. Egan might be powerful, but Kale, Brianna, and their allies were determined to protect the Crystal Lake at any cost. And so, with resolute hearts and elevated spirits, they marched toward the destiny awaiting them in the depths of the forest, ready to face any challenge that came their way. As Kale and Brianna's group continued their journey to gather allies, they entered an older and more mysterious part of the forest. The trees here were even taller and older, with thick trunks covered in moss and branches that intertwined above them, creating a natural dome. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating an ethereal and magical atmosphere. "We are approaching the fairies' territory," Kale said, his voice low and reverent. "We need to be respectful and careful. Fairies are powerful and unpredictable, but they can be valuable allies." Brianna nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. She had heard many stories about the fairies, beings of great power and beauty, but also known for their pranks and volatile temper. As they walked deeper into the forest, they began to notice signs of the fairies' presence, small glowing lights dancing among the leaves, soft giggles echoing in the air, and the sweet smell of wildflowers. Finally, they reached a clearing bathed in the soft light of the sun. In the center of the clearing was a circle of mushrooms, known as a fairy ring. Inside this circle, seated on a throne of flowers, was the fairy queen, Ain. She was stunning, with long golden hair that fell like a cascade of sunlight and eyes of deep blue that seemed to hold all the secrets of the world. Kale bowed deeply and Brianna followed his example. "Queen Ain," began Kale, his voice full of respect. "We have come to seek your help. The Crystal Lake is threatened by an ancient enemy, Egan, who seeks to corrupt its waters and bring darkness to our world." Ain looked at them with a contemplative expression. "Kale, guardian of the Crystal Lake, and Brianna, the healer of dreams," she said, her melodic voice filling the clearing. "I felt the disturbance in the magical lines and knew you would come. Egan is a threat not only to the lake but to the entire land. What do you ask of me and my people?" Brianna stepped forward, feeling the need to speak. "We need your wisdom and power, Queen Ain. We know that the fairies possess abilities that can reinforce the lake's protections and help in the battle against Egan. We ask for your alliance in this fight to protect what is sacred." Ain smiled slightly. "You have courage, and that is worthy of respect. The fairies will help, but remember, our help does not come without a price. We must maintain balance, and for every favor granted, there must be an act of reciprocity." Kale nodded. "We understand, Queen Ain. We are willing to pay the necessary price to protect the Crystal Lake." With a nod, Ain stood and called her fairies. Small luminous figures began to appear from all sides, floating and laughing as they gathered around their queen. "We will prepare a strengthening ritual for the lake," said Ain. "It will require a sacrifice of pure and sincere energy." During the ritual preparation, Kale and Brianna were amazed by the fairies' skill. They wove spells with their words and gestures, filling the air with vibrant and luminous energy. Brianna participated actively, following the fairies' instructions to mix herbs and prepare potions, feeling an increasing connection with the surrounding magic. The ritual was performed at sunset. Ain and her fairies positioned themselves around the lake, their hands raised in unison. Following Kale's guidance, Brianna poured a special potion into the lake's waters while chanting protection and strength spells. The water glowed intensely, and an energy field enveloped the lake, reinforcing its barriers against any evil influence. When the ritual ended, Ain approached Brianna. "You have a pure spirit and remarkable inner strength," she said. "The fairies will stand by your side in the upcoming battle. Remember, true strength comes from within, and your heart will be your greatest weapon." Brianna thanked her, feeling strengthened by Ain's blessing. Kale also expressed his gratitude, knowing that the alliance with the fairies would be crucial in the fight against Egan. With the combined powers of elves, humans, and fairies, the defense of the Crystal Lake was stronger than ever. As they prepared to leave, a small fairy named Neve approached Brianna. "I want to help more closely," she said, her voice soft and determined. "I may be small, but my magic is powerful. I can offer guidance and protection directly." Brianna accepted the offer with a smile. "Your help will be very valuable, Neve." "Thank you." With Neve by their side, Kale and Brianna continued their journey, feeling more prepared and confident to face the challenges ahead. The battle against Egan was approaching, and each new ally brought new hope. The forests of Ireland continued to whisper their secrets, but now, Kale and Brianna were ready to listen and fight for the future of the Crystal Lake. The days passed quickly as Kale and Brianna continued their journey, gathering allies and preparing for the final confrontation against Egan. The threat of the renegade druid was increasingly palpable, and the air was charged with the tension of an imminent battle. The dark creatures sent by Egan became bolder, constantly testing the defenses around the crystal lake. One night, while camping in a clearing near the lake, Brianna had a disturbing dream. She saw herself in a dark and desolate field, surrounded by shadows whispering promises of power and destruction. In the center of the field, Egan waited, his eyes shining with dangerous malice. "Come to me, Brianna," he whispered, his voice like a soft poison. "Join me, and I will give you power you never imagined." She woke up sweating, her heart pounding. Kale, who was keeping watch, immediately noticed her state. "What happened?" he asked, concerned. I had a dream," said Brianna, trying to catch her breath. "Egan was there, tempting me with promises of power. He's trying to corrupt me." Kale frowned. "That's worrying. He knows you are a threat to his plans. We need to stay vigilant." The next day, as they prepared for another protection ritual, a group of dark creatures attacked. They emerged from the shadows, their forms twisted and malevolent, advancing with ferocity. Kale and Brianna, along with their allies, fought bravely, but the creatures seemed endless. During the battle, Brianna was separated from the main group and found herself surrounded. Her heart racing, she remembered Ain's words about true strength coming from within. Closing her eyes, she focused, feeling the energy of the lake and the forest around her. A wave of power coursed through her body, and she raised her hands, conjuring an explosion of light that dissipated the creatures around her. Kale, observing from a distance, was impressed by Brianna's display of power. He knew she had a crucial role in the battle against Egan, and her courage and determination inspired him. With the help of their allies, they managed to repel the attack, but they knew this was only the beginning. As night fell, Kale decided it was time for a crucial test. He led Brianna to a secret spot in the forest, an ancient stone circle used for tests of courage and strength by the old guardians. "This place is sacred," Kale explained. "Here, you will be tested. We need to make sure we are ready to face Egan." Brianna nodded, feeling the gravity of the situation. In the center of the stone circle, a blue flame burned, fueled by a magical fire that never went out. Kale instructed her to enter the circle and face her deepest doubts and fears. When Brianna entered the circle, the blue flame grew, enveloping her in a mystical light. Suddenly, she found herself in a dreamlike environment, surrounded by images of her memories and deepest fears. She saw her village in flames, her family in danger, and Egan laughing at her weakness. But then, she also saw visions of strength and hope, Kale by her side, Ain and her fairies, and the protective spirits of the Crystal Lake. With renewed determination, Brianna faced each fear, rejecting Egan's promises of power and affirming her will to protect the lake and everything it represented. Emerging from the circle, she was exhausted but triumphant. The blue flame dimmed, indicating she had passed the test. Kale smiled, his pride evident. "You have proven your courage, Brianna. We are ready." After the test of courage, Kale and Brianna felt a renewal of strength and determination. They knew they needed to continue seeking allies for the final battle against Egan. They headed toward a remote region where a village of druids known for their wisdom and power lived. Upon arrival, they were received cautiously by the druids, led by an elder named Fian. He was a tall and imposing man with a long white beard and eyes that shone with the wisdom of many years. "Why have you come here?" asked Fian, his deep voice echoing among the trees. Kale explained the situation, talking about Egan and the threat to the Crystal Lake. Fian listened attentively, his face expressionless, but his eyes reflecting the understanding of the danger. "Egan is an old enemy," Fian finally said. "But our help is not given lightly. What do you offer in return?" Brianna stepped forward. "We offer our friendship and alliance. We promise to protect and respect your lands and share our knowledge." And, above all, we offer our eternal gratitude. Vian pondered for a moment before nodding. Very well. We will help you. But know that our alliance goes beyond this battle. It will be a union of our forces to protect the land and its secrets. The druids brought with them a vast knowledge of ancient spells and powerful rituals. Working side by side with Kale and Brianna, they began to prepare the final defenses for the Crystal Lake. The atmosphere was charged with vibrant energy, and everyone felt the imminence of the confrontation. During this time, Brianna developed a deep friendship with Vian. He taught her about the ancient druidic arts and shared stories of past battles against dark forces. In return, Brianna taught him about the healing herbs and potions she had learned from her grandmother. Together, they formed a strong and respectful partnership. One night, while discussing strategies around a campfire, a messenger arrived with disturbing news. "Eogan is gathering an army," said the messenger, his voice trembling with fear. "He plans to attack at dawn." The news caused an uproar among the allies, but Kale remained calm. "We need to be prepared," he said, his voice firm. "Everyone knows what to do. Protect the lake and fight with everything you have. We cannot let Eogan triumph." The next morning, as the sun began to rise, Eogan's army advanced. Creatures of darkness and evil spirits marched under his command, and the battle began with a fury that shook the earth. Kale and Brianna, along with their allies, faced Eogan's forces with courage and determination. Brianna, now equipped with the druid's knowledge and the fairy's blessing, fought bravely alongside Kale. Using her potions and spells, she managed to repel many enemies, while Kale, with his magical strength, protected the lake with powerful barriers. The battle was intense and fierce. At a crucial moment, Eogan appeared, his presence emanating oppressive darkness. He confronted Kale directly, his words filled with contempt. "You cannot stop me, Kale," he said. "This power is mine by right." Kale responded firmly. "You were banished for your own corruption, Eogan. I will not allow you to destroy what is sacred." While Kale and Eogan fought, Brianna faced her own battles. She used everything she had learned to protect the allies and maintain the lake's defenses. In a moment of clarity, she remembered Ain's words about inner strength and found a source of power within herself that she never imagined she had. With a cry of determination, Brianna cast a powerful spell that struck Eogan, weakening him momentarily. Kale seized the opportunity to intensify his attacks, forcing Eogan to retreat. The battle continued, but the balance began to tip in favor of Kale and his allies. The tension in the battle reached its peak as Kale, Brianna, and their allies faced Eogan and his dark forces. The Crystal Lake shone brightly, reflecting the magic and power emanating from the fight. The forest around seemed to vibrate with the energy of the confrontation, as if the very earth was aware of the importance of that moment. Eogan, enraged by his momentary defeat, gathered all his strength and launched a fierce attack against Kale. "You cannot win, Kale," he shouted, his voice echoing with a supernatural tone. "The power of the Crystal Lake will be mine, and you all will perish." Kale stood firm, his hands glowing with intense light as he channeled the magic of the waters and the earth. "We protect what is sacred, Eogan. You will never take the Crystal Lake." As Kale and Eogan faced each other in a battle of magic and strength, Brianna led the allies in defense against the dark creatures. Using her potions and enchantments, she managed to weaken many enemies, giving her companions the necessary advantage to fight. Suddenly, an unexpected event changed the course of the battle. A mysterious figure emerged from the forest, emanating an aura of ancient power and wisdom. It was an ancient druid, long thought lost, known only as Lorcan. His presence brought a sense of calm and hope to the battlefield. Lorcan raised a hand, and the earth around the Crystal Lake responded, sending roots and vines to bind the dark creatures and temporarily immobilize Eogan. "This is a sacred place," said Lorcan, his deep voice resonating. "Egan, you have violated the laws of nature and spirit. Your ambition will be your downfall." Egan struggled against the bonds, but the combined strength of Lorcan, Kale, and Brianna was too much for him. With a final desperate effort, he tried to cast a last spell but was interrupted by a joint attack from Kale and Lorcan that dissipated his dark forces and left him vulnerable. Brianna, seizing the opportunity, cast a containment spell she had learned from the druids. Egan was enveloped in a bright light, and his form began to dissolve. "You have not won, Kale," he whispered before disappearing completely. "I will return." With Egan defeated, the dark creatures began to retreat and disappear. The battlefield fell silent, except for the soft sound of the crystal lake, which now shone more brightly than ever, as if thanking for the protection. Kale, Brianna, and their allies gathered around the lake, exhausted but triumphant. Lorcan approached, his face serious but satisfied. "You did well," he said. "The crystal lake is safe, at least for now. But remember, the balance must be maintained, and vigilance must never cease." With the battle won and the crystal lake protected, Kale and Brianna began to reflect on the events that had occurred. They sat by the lake, watching the tranquil waters and feeling a deep peace. The forest around seemed more vibrant and alive, as if celebrating the victory with them. "We did it," said Brianna, her tone full of relief and satisfaction. "We managed to protect the lake and defeat Egan." Kale smiled, his face relaxed for the first time in days. "Yes, Brianna. Egan was defeated, but that was just one battle. The war to protect the balance and harmony of our world continues. And you have proven to be an invaluable ally." Brianna looked at Kale, feeling a deep gratitude and respect. "I couldn't have done it without you, Kale. I've learned so much during this journey and feel like I've found my true purpose." Kale nodded. "And I have learned much from you, Brianna. Your courage, determination, and purity of heart are inspiring. Together, we managed to do what seemed impossible." The allies began to disperse, returning to their own lands and responsibilities. Each one took with them the memory of the battle and the commitment to protect their own parts of the Celtic world. The fairies returned to their realm, the druids returned to their sacred groves, and the humans returned to their villages with stories of bravery and unity. Kale and Brianna stayed a little longer, enjoying the tranquility and beauty of the crystal lake. They knew their journey was not yet over, but they felt a sense of accomplishment and peace. The mission to protect the lake and maintain the balance of the Celtic world was ongoing, but now they had allies and a deeper understanding of their purpose. Before leaving, Brianna walked to the lake's edge and made a final prayer, thanking the gods and spirits for their guidance and protection. She scooped some of the crystal clear water in her hands and poured it over the earth as a sign of respect and gratitude. "I promise to return," she said softly, "and I will continue to protect this sacred place." Kale joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "And I will be here, as I always have been. Together, we will continue our vigil and protect what is sacred." With one last look at the lake, Kale and Brianna departed, knowing the future would bring new challenges but also new opportunities to grow and learn. They were ready to face whatever came their way with courage and determination, and with the certainty that light would always prevail over darkness. And so, the legend of the Guardian of the Crystal Lake and the brave healer Brianna continued to be told, inspiring generations with stories of bravery, friendship, and the eternal struggle for balance and harmony in the heart of the Celtic world. Good night and enchanted dreams.